It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
But that's really unusual to see every single market in positive territory. What that sort of says to me is that there must be a level of underlying positivity out there amongst the buying population to have that demand pushing prices up across the board.
And that is Veronica Morgan on the Real Estate Breakfast this morning. Your Aussie property news as we cover that off 7 days a week. Streaming right now on Spotify and iHeartRadio. Another weekend. Yes, it's come and gone as we count down towards Christmas. 10 more days and we are there at the dinner table. Shopping is mental with huge crowds reported around the country. And this whole thing about people looking at their phones as they walk seems to be a growing trend, doesn't it? More and more people are doing it. It looks silly at the best of times. But hey, if you're over 40 and you're doing this in your 50s and 60s, it just looks really odd. So, yeah, you want to give that one up as quickly as possible. And then you've got some younger women who never look up at all because they're looking at their screen. They never crash into anybody. And I found out from my niece why that is. Apparently, they're walking using the camera's viewfinder. I'm not making this up. Apparently, that is a thing. And social media at this time of the year, it does grow in consumption. I put one of those social media apps on my phone to tell me how much social media I am consuming every day. And I got to tell you, I was extremely shocked. I am on my phone 28 minutes a day. And I thought, well, that's got to stop. That's got to come down. Almost half an hour a day I am losing from staring at my screen. How bad is your addiction? It is a Monday, December the 15th. Let's go to Sydney and catch up with Veronica Morgan from Good Deeds. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast. Have you calculated your total social media time on your phone?
Good morning, Craig. No, I haven't. I would think 28 minutes a day sounds light on compared to what a lot of people would be spending. I would hope I'm only spending that on it. I suspect a little bit more because I do use it for work. You know, I do post a bit on LinkedIn and comment on LinkedIn, also on Instagram, a little bit sort of Facebook, sort of personal. It shows my age, I guess. But I try to limit it and I try to stay off it and get out of the doom scrolls, that's for sure. But, you know, I'd be really happy if I was only 28 minutes a day because I am using it professionally as well.
Yeah. But what about walking around using the camera on your phone as a periscope for looking where you're going?
That is next level. You know, it's interesting. Whenever I go to a concert and I see these people who basically record the whole concert on their phones, and I'm like, you're here. Are you really going to go away and watch any of this stuff? Because, you know, every now and then I do record a little bit and I've very rarely gone back and watched any of it. Like, it's pretty sad that you're actually experiencing life like through the lens as opposed to, or through your screen, as opposed to actually experiencing life. I think that's really scary.
Yes, no, that is absolutely 100%. I never understand why people do that. They're spending hundreds of dollars on these concert tickets. Some of them are streaming it, which means if they're streaming it, they can do that stream for the entire concert, which is, well, it's just daft, if I'm to coin an old 70s phrase. And regarding the phone, you know, what I do when I'm out, I leave my phone in my car as much as possible. People who know me know that this is my behaviour because I do try to live as much as possible in the 1980s. It was a much simpler life and less noise.
I have the discipline of not sleeping next to my phone. So I have to get up and go and get it if I do decide I want to start scrolling in the middle of the night, which a lot of people do. I think it's really a height of rudeness to sit at the dinner table and be scrolling your phone. And you know, there are some pretty bad manners out there in the sense that it's like, please pay attention to the people you're with. You know, stop trying to pay attention to people you're not with. And certainly with my daughter, I've got a 19-year-old and she's probably walks around using a phone as a periscope. I don't know. But we don't have the phone at the dinner table. And even when we're driving around, around, obviously not when she's driving, but if I'm driving, I'm like, please, can you put that away? Talk to me. You need to be vigilant. And sometimes it's funny, my daughter visited some family recently and came away and said, you know what, Mum, I'm so glad that you were really strict with me about the phone in my bedroom and everything when I was younger, because we've got family members who are so addicted to their phones, they actually don't have a life. That is their whole life, and which is really sad. And so that's her observations. I'm glad that now she's a little bit older, she's thanking me for that discipline.
Yeah, and we'd be really interested to know a couple of points there. You can either leave a voice message or you can send us a email. What is your usage on your phone? Is that 28 minutes good, do you think, per day? I was shocked that I was losing half an hour, but let us know. Our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com, and walking around with your phone and using the camera, I mean, that is just absolutely crazy. So we would love to hear from you. Another thing I just wanted to talk about, because this is sort of running through a couple of my highlights for 2025. This has come quite late, but Netflix is circling Warner Brothers. This is this deal. If the deal goes through, Netflix would suddenly control HBO, Warner Brother Films, also DC, and the massive back catalogue, basically the motherlode of premium content. But these big acquisitions, they're not cheap. And historically, when streamers absorb huge studios, expect those prices on your subscriptions to go up. That is something in the forecast for 2026. If that happens, if that goes through, expect your subscription fee to go up. That'll be sad for a lot of people.
Yes, very interesting. I try to keep on top. It's very tempting to keep adding subscriptions, and I've got 3 currently, but I like to only have 2. So I'm thinking quite seriously about which one I'm going to can.
Yeah, and just on that very subject, the movie theatres at the moment, they've got to be struggling. As a lot of people know, I'm a filmmaker. I've made a couple of feature films. I love the theatre, and when you're creating a film, you want people to go and see it in the theatre. In fact, my first film at the premiere, we were lucky enough to have 2,500 people there, and I knew that was going to be the biggest audience that the film would play to. But in 2025, I didn't go to the theatre once because of these big screens and the home projector that I've got, 150-inch widescreen experience. It's like, why bother going? But I'm almost ashamed to say that, because I do love going to the theatre, but it's just made it so much easier to watch content at home.
It is fascinating because, that sort of leads into real estate a little bit, doesn't it? And whenever I walk into a home and I see this giant television that dominates the living space, I think, yep, bloke bought that. Because very rarely do you see women buying giant televisions. But also, Australia is, apparently we have the biggest houses in the world, even bigger than American houses on average. And, this sort of mansion with your home cinema, like I've always thought that was quite a sort of an indulgent room to have in a normal suburban home. But I guess, if people are not going out to watch, and they can watch whatever they want, whenever they want, basically with whoever they want. But, they've obviously changed formats over years. They're offering a more deluxe experience, table service, but also smaller cinemas. So are you suggesting that that's not working for them?
Yeah, no, it's falling away. People are deciding just to watch content at home, and I totally get it. The other thing that I felt that the cinema chains were doing for a long, long time was overcharging. Not all theatres were doing that around Australia. You could find some tickets that might only be $7 or $8. So quite a big difference in price points, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to bring the prices down now because fewer people are attending. Well, we should sort of have a look at real estate after that look back over 2025. One of the key things about next year has happened, and that was with Michelle Bullock. The RBA, they're a little bit nervous at this time of the year because of the Christmas spend. What is that going to do with the economy? All eyes are going to be on the first quarter of next year, which is fast looming, as to what they might do.
Well, yeah, I think the markets were pricing in rate drops at some point in 2026 for some time. And in fact, earlier in the year, in 2025, they were thinking that there was going to be more in 2025. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a complete about face. And now even some markets are pricing in, some increases in 2026. But I guess what I would say is to be careful about thinking that that's doom and gloom for the property market. We can argue whether prices should or shouldn't continue rising at the rate that they have been in various markets or not. Be that as it may, if interest rates were purely responsible for price movements, then you would not have had booms in sort of Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth in 2023 when rates were still rising. Melbourne should have taken off in 2025 when rates started falling, So I think what we need to recognise is that Australia is more than just one property market. Not all markets move in sync. Even within a capital city, you've got different, you've got micro markets, and interest rates don't affect everybody equally. If you really don't want rates to go up and your mortgage repayments to go up, then stop spending at Christmas on bulk,
Yeah, indeed. And as you look back over 2025, what's been the standout for you? Because it's been sort of an up and down kind of a year. It's arguably a less volatile year than the previous year, which kind of makes us wonder where we're going to land next year. But anything that really stands out for you as you look back over this year?
I guess it sort of depends which market you're in. We looked at Cotality data that came out for November, so in early December. For the first time, I think, since 2021, we saw every single market across the country in growth mode. Now, some of those were minuscule growth numbers and different segments of the market. So overwhelmingly, lowest quartile was performing the strongest, and that can be put down potentially to the first home buyers, the 5% deposit scheme being extended. But that's really unusual to see every single market in positive territory. What that sort of says to me is that there must be a level of underlying positivity out there amongst the buying population to have that demand pushing prices up across the board. So in terms of what's underpinning the property market, rightly or wrongly, consumer sentiment and what buyers think, basically, and also what sellers think, because sellers aren't going to list their properties en masse if they think they're going to lose money either.
Yes, fair comments. Well, you're going to have a break coming up soon. Anything specially planned with some downtime as you look ahead to 2026? What are you doing?
I'm totally excited. I've got a week in Tassie over Christmas, and I am so looking forward to some fantastic food and wine, fresh air, clean water, and just some beautiful time out. So that's what I'm up to. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to a coastal resort, the same as you, just good food, relaxation, because this job of getting these podcasts happening every morning, it's quite a pressure cooker because we talk to hundreds and hundreds of people every year. It's not always easy to put all of this together, and thank you for your contribution over the 2025 year. We have spoken multiple times, and it's through the good graces like yourself and many other professionals working in the industry. You explain the property market through your lens, and it's always greatly appreciated. So have yourself that fantastic week in Tassie, a great new year. Look forward to your company in 2026 as we get ready to do it all over again.
Fantastic, and same to you. Have a wonderful festive season. Enjoy the break.
We are just as addicted to property as you are. The Real Estate Podcast.
Don't get me wrong, it's not your job to understand the process. You're not here to manage how everything moves, but you do have a team of people who you're likely paying a lot of money who can advise you.
In the market for the apartments, there is quite a bit of stock online. Because of that, I do believe that it's a bit of a buyer's market on that side. However, because of the houses, there's only 3 current houses for sale here. There's quite a high demand for those detached houses.
So you're under 25s where they don't have, the servicing, they don't have the income to service these large mortgages that are needed to buy a house in Sydney. So what they're actually doing is they're going interstate, buying properties in growth areas. Some are using using buyer's agents, some are doing it themselves.
And if that's sold for this, my house is on bigger land. I can see the top of centre point. They could only see the bottom of centre point. It does sort of change a vendor's perception. And then I guess you've got to get onto that educating stage and go through the notions on why it's sold for that.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.